Today we're talking nightlife in Charlotte, public transportation, and crime. I'm Carlton Hargrove, and this is 282. Folks, to another episode of 282. As I said earlier, I'm your host, Carlton Hargrove. This is actually our fourth episode. We're streaming live, so maybe you're at home right now or someplace at your computer looking at us. Thank you. If you have any comments on how to improve the show, any ideas you might have, send it to us via Twitter at 282TV. So we're going to start the show. We've got a great group with us once again, and I'm going to introduce everybody to you. Down on the end, we have David Borax, who is the editor-in-chief of the DavisonNews.net, and CorneliusNews.net. Two jobs. Thanks. We've also got a reporter from News 14, Kate Geyer. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we've got a digital strategist for CLTBuzz.com and a guy who knows a lot about nightlife in Charlotte, Constantine Muzikaitis.
That's perfect.
How was that?
That's perfect.
See, I don't we talked before, I don't really know you with your last name. It's like Madonna or Cher or something. Constantine.
Exactly.
So everybody knows you're Constantine.
Yeah.
But thank you everyone for joining us. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be a guest on 282.
Thanks for having us here.
All right. The first topic we're going to talk about is the city council, okay? We're going to talk about nightlife as it applies to the city council. First up, everybody knows that nightlife is a great extracurricular activity in Charlotte. I myself go out a lot to many of the bars and venues and clubs in town. And, my bar tab probably reflects that as well. But, the city council has been floating around a lot of ideas over the last few years about imposing ordinances, noise ordinances on nightlife. Last year, they tried to impose a noise ordinance that would basically stop outdoor music in Charlotte. And then there's rumors right now about them also wanting to impose an ordinance that will actually end indoor activities at a certain time. Some people are saying midnight inside of clubs. Now, this is in proximity to a residence, 400 feet or something like that from a residence. Now, all those things, they sound bad, but I really want to get your ideas about how this really will affect Charlotte nightlife. Constantine, since you're the nightlife expert, what do you think?
Sure. Well, first of all, from the venue's perspective, I think that this is a huge concern because they rely so much on trying to use different types of media like live music to introduce people to the venue and to drum up business.
Right.
For the outdoor venues that can have music, listed outside, then obviously that's an even bigger concern. The ones that are outside of the area, where there are a huge amount of residents, obviously not that big of a concern. But for them specifically, you got to remember that these bars are popping up in places around Charlotte where there's already a residence established. It's not the other way around.
Right.
So it's not like you're moving into a neighborhood that already has, the noise there, and you've already committed. Say, you know what, I'm gonna live with this because it's something I want to live in this neighborhood. It's happening the other way around. So it's a huge concern from them, obviously, and they need to get a little bit more involved. I think from their perspective, though, the ordinance and some of the rules are a little bit confusing.
Okay.
And they need to be explained, I think, a little bit better.
Okay. David, what do you think? I don't know what you guys have reported on your various websites about this kind of subject, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we should also look at it from the neighborhood's perspective. As you mentioned, the nightlife in Charlotte is growing, and these clubs are popping up in places where they weren't before. So, as you mentioned, people are getting concerned about new institutions in their neighborhood. So, what we have here is kind of an offshoot of growth in the area and how nightlife is beginning to impinge on some neighborhoods where it didn't before. I think, this partly originated out of some citizen complaints about this. And so what the city council is trying to do here is to bring the two sides together and come to a meeting of the minds about how we can have nightlife coexisting with these clubs that are here.
Kate, what do you think?
I go back and forth. I see both sides. I'm in the neighborhood I'm in because there are places walking distance that you can go to, restaurants, bars, that kind of thing. So I understand that people want those choices and those options, but I also understand, I walk to them. They're not in my backyard, so
Right.
I don't hear them later in the night when I decide to go home. When I'm done with my evening, I can go home to a quiet house. So I see both sides, you know. I think you're right. We do need a little more, I don't know, rules or maybe more clarification on exactly what they mean, because we see large venues, look at, you know, the NC Music Factory. They
Right.
have that huge outdoor venue now.
Right.
And you're going to tell a band that maybe wants to keep playing, you know, they might have a set time where they end, but if they're so into the music, they want to keep going and you tell them they can't, you're going to have a really unhappy crowd.
Well, you know, I think it's to be fair. You know, the last year's noise ordinance did not go into effect as it was originally proposed, and the one that we're talking about that could end things indoors is not, you know, been voted on. Is kind of a rumor right now, so we're not sure. Now, there are some stuff that is definitely on the books that we know about. For instance, we were talking about how when you have bottle service and table service at some of these high-end clubs, that you have to lock up the liquor in a steel kind of contraption. They don't have to do that in some cities around the country. Alcohol sales stop at 2 a.m. That's something, you know, that's a little earlier compared to some other cities. And there's some good ones too, like we have a smoking ban. You know, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I guess the question, you know, is ultimately, are we creating ordinances that will put money in people's pockets? I mean, in terms of the bars and venues, are we creating ordinances that are hurting what could be, you know, an economic windfall?
It's a double-edged sword, I think, because some of them really, really work, and some of them obviously are so outdated. For example, you know, with the lock boxes, you know, for people to not be able to have access to those bottles when they're at the venue, that obviously is an outdated, I think, kind of, you know, idea or thought process on how people are drinking, you know, whether it's responsibly or irresponsibly.
Right.
And I think that's why those laws were originally put in place.
Okay.
But they seem to work in other cities, and I think that there's got to be some kind of a compromise there. You know, when it comes to, and there have been a lot of rumors, you're right, about, you know, whether or not they're going to start to close bars a little bit earlier, or if they were going to have more restrictions on it. These absolutely, they almost stop the bar from being able to manage their places the way that they want to, and to be able to become profitable or even more profitable.
Okay.
And entertainment is a huge business here in Charlotte that needs to survive. It has to survive. It's one of the attractions, I think, for the city.
Right. Well, we're going to actually transition to the next topic. You know, hopefully that, you know, we can get some kind of definitive answer on how this nightlife ordinances are going to proceed. Now, in the meantime, you know, David, you brought up the idea of growth, and one of the big things with growth is public transportation. And last week, the Iredell County Board of Commissions basically killed a proposal that would have built a rail line from Mooresville to Uptown Charlotte. And they got rid of it because of cost limitation. I guess they wanted to be able to limit the cost of building this. But they killed it. It's effectively dead right now until we hear further notice. And this kind of reminds me when they tried to build the light rail before. There was a lot of, you know, people against the light rail because it costs so much money. And now that it's done, nobody's really complaining as much. But still, any talk of increasing that is met with a lot of, you know, adversarial comments. Now, I want to know from you in terms of growth, how will we grow as a metropolitan area if we really don't have the will to fund public transportation?
It's a great question, and I think ever since I've been here, which is about 20 years, people have been talking about adding some kind of regional transportation system on rail and bus, and we've had a zillion proposals about different ways to do that, from these rail lines that we're seeing right now to possibility of bus lanes on Independence and things like that. It's clear that as this region grows, we need some kind of alternative to the roads, and we're working on the roads as well. But one of the things that transit backers have put forward now is a new plan to try and build this rail line north of Charlotte. It would be a companion line to the blue line that runs right now to southwest of Charlotte, south of Charlotte to Pineville, and which they're talking about expanding out to the university area. But I think it comes down to a question about, do people think that rail should be part of the solution here? And I want to say one thing, is you mentioned that the Iredell County Commission has killed this. I think it's important to understand that what they voted on was actually not a measure that would kill this. They have asked for answers to more questions so that they can make a better decision later on. So they said, we don't support this plan in its current form, but we want the backers of this system to come to us with the answers to these questions so that we can make an informed decision in the next 90 days or so.
Kate, now I'm sure you report on, public transportation issues all the time, News 14. When are we really going to get the will to be able to fund public transportation?
Yeah, wish I could answer that. If anybody else out there
I need
could.
you to answer this question.
I can't do that. It would be nice. I mean, I know that everyone's looking at the price with the light rail. It was such an expensive addition to our
Right.
city. I came into Charlotte. I'm not from here, so it was already here. It's nice. It's to be able to catch a ride on it, but was it the cheapest option? So I think with this going to Iredell County, that could be a concern. Is there a cheaper option? And I think maybe people aren't shooting down everything. Maybe they're just wondering, is there a more economical way to do it? Can we do it cheaper? And maybe that's, maybe they want more information.
Well, the Iredell Commission, the things that they're concerned about is, number one, they don't believe the business plan that has been put forward. It says that they think they can build this for $452 million over the next 20 years, and they distrust those projections. And some of the commissioners at the meeting last week got up and they ticked off a list of major public transportation projects that have gone over budget. One of the commissioners said on average they end up double the budget. They're concerned about how the rail would affect Iredell. So it's not just a cost thing, it's also, do we really want rail?
But that's the point that I'm bringing up. It's like, I moved here from Atlanta, and people complain about the traffic in Atlanta all the time. It's horrible. But one of the reasons it's so bad is because when they try to create the MARTA system, all these outlying areas were totally against it for lots of different reasons. But the bottom line is they asked, is this going to be good for us? I mean, how could it be bad? That's the question. I mean,
Right.
Well, some of the specific concerns that they're expressing are it's going to move more people from Mecklenburg County into Iredell County, and it'll tax our schools. And we've just spent a lot of time trying to fix our schools so they can accommodate the people here now. What happens if, 30,000 more people move here and we can't accommodate that? They're also concerned about other services and how the other roads around will be able to handle traffic that comes from increased population. So partly they're just not sure about it. I mean, I think there's a cultural divide between Statesville and Charlotte. In fact, one of the commissioners the other night called it a cockamamie plan, and he doesn't see why we need this. But he also said, in Iredell County, we believe it when we see it. In Mecklenburg County, they see it when they believe it. So he also is expressing some concern about the willingness of people in Mecklenburg County to pay for things that they don't think we need.
But
Well,
if the people are coming anyway, this kind of goes
Yeah,
back to what you're
right.
saying. I mean, they are afraid the growth will step into their county. Well, open your eyes. Look how much Charlotte has spread out.
Exactly.
So I kind of see what you're saying. What's the bad thing? If these people are moving to our area, obviously Charlotte can't handle it. We have the outlying counties now that are packed.
Mm-hmm.
Why not try and make a better transportation system now, not 20 years from now
Right.
when it's too late or there's so many
A
people
better
here.
transportation system is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those must, things that I think coming here, just like you from Atlanta or Kate, wherever you're coming from, moving to Charlotte, the subway system in New York City, for example, and how well it works. And obviously, we're not talking about transforming what we have here into a subway system like a larger city, but there has to be an immediate plan that gets more focus on, and then obviously a more long-term plan, I think, as well, where we have to start to look at this as a must thing. It's going to happen. The politics are obviously going to be in place, obviously, where people are going to debate these issues, and it's going to take some time. Obviously, that slows down the process, but it's something that's going to inevitably have to happen.
Right. No, I totally agree. I mean, the other side of it, you were mentioning roads before. A lot of people think that these kind of projects take funding away from building roads and finishing projects that are kind of unfinished. And there are some environmental concerns as well. I mean, the more roads we get, the more cars that are just go on the roads, and we have more pollution. I mean, are environmental things a factor at all to the Iredell County decision?
I don't think the folks in Iredell County are taking it into consideration, but one of the reasons why this plan is coming up right now is that our region is under kind of a watch from the EPA. We're on warning to try and improve the situation with air pollution in our area, and it's directly related to the number of cars on the road. So they feel that they need to put a plan like this forward. I think the debate here is it's about how we pay for this and is it done efficiently, but it's also on the bigger issue of do we need rail? And I think the backers of this plan has spent a lot of time on the financial picture and not so much on dealing just with the basic issue of do we need this? And,
Right.
and I think there's a cultural divide there.
Well, let's hope we can get it together. I mean, ultimately, doesn't really cost too much up front as opposed to maybe what it'll cost later, but that's neither here nor there. Let's go to the next topic, and which is crime in Charlotte. Crime. There was a few years ago where Charlotte was talking about it was like one of the most dangerous cities to live in. I don't understand that coming from where I'm coming from, but crime apparently, based on statistics that were released last week, has apparently fallen about 7%, a little over 7%, and this is part of a kind of ongoing trend since Rodney Monroe came into office. But some people are calling into question the way they tabulated the numbers. I guess, the question I kind of want to ask you guys, do you feel like we have a safer city now, or is somebody kind of playing with the numbers? What do you think, Constantine?
I've always felt safe in Charlotte, and it's one of those.
Well, you're from
things
New
where-
York,
yeah,
man.
exactly, and that's why I guess I can feel a little bit more free talking about that is the fact that the presence of the Charlotte Police Department, I think, in Charlotte is very obvious. In any part of the town that you might be in, there's obviously a presence, and that's important from a nightlife point of view, also, and also from an events point of view. Whenever there's these big events that happen, in uptown Charlotte or in other parts of the town, they're always there. They're always willing to be a part of the process. So I feel like if that continues, obviously those numbers will stay down. And that's very, very important, I think, for Charlotte, for people that are coming into the community to want to be a part of the community a little more.
Kate, you actually interviewed Chief Monroe?
I did. We sat down last week after the crime stats came out
Okay.
and talked to him. I think one thing to point out is that it's not just here in Charlotte. It is a national trend that crime is down. And I also think here personally, for the time that I've been here now, more than 4 years in Charlotte, I've seen it dropping. But from doing stories that I've done, interviewing victims, different police agencies, I think people are becoming more aware. So maybe that's helping, if they
Okay.
see a car in their driveway that doesn't belong there, maybe more people are getting involved. Chief Monroe was asked about the reporting and the stats and how that goes. And I mean, just to paraphrase, one of his quotes was, a dead body's a dead body. I can't change those numbers. I
Right.
can't cover that up. I can't hide it. So we covered so many topics in that interview, but he said there are ways they have to do crime stats.
Right.
It's protocol. So, if it meets these, criteria, then it's this crime.
Right.
So,
Well, I did read about in the paper where they said that they would actually say, well, if somebody was a drive-by shooting, maybe it would be then classified as a destruction of property or something like that. Did he mention that at all? I mean,
was
you can't
asked-
change a dead body into a
Right.
non-dead body, but you
Right.
can change a drive-by into a,
right, and he was asked about that, and he said criminal code. There's a criminal code of how they identify each crime. He said, if somebody can bring me the proof that we're changing it a different way, or bring me the numbers, he said he was open to it.
Okay.
So he did talk about this, and he also talked about, sometimes they do change the classifications. Right now, the FBI is working on changing rape classification. So he said sometimes those change, and maybe that's what's happened, and they're just, need to catch up with it in the database or the statistics.
David, are you surprised that the local and the national trend toward falling crime stats, based on the fact that we have a recession, and usually you would think with a down economy, crime would go up? How do you attribute that?
Well, I don't think I'm surprised that the crime rate has gone down. I mean, I think one of the things we need to look at is the institutions that we have in place. And I think what's going on here is a tug of war between a basic distrust of government versus what we are doing on the other hand. And I think, the police departments around here are fully staffed, and they are professional, and they've been raising their own standards. And I think that's contributing to it. I think citizens, as you say, being involved in reporting crimes and block watches and things like that are definitely contributing. So, I'm not sure that the allegations against the department here are fully up to snuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's going on here is people who have some kind of a reason to distrust the department are questioning its statistics. And I'm not saying that they haven't fudged the numbers. Anytime you have a bureaucratic report, you have to look at the numbers carefully. We've
Right.
seen examples in education recently where some numbers were not right and that sort of thing. But
Well, I have a question. It's interesting. Rodney Monroe is sort of being, to a certain degree, being held as kind of a messianic figure when it comes to crime in Charlotte. But when he was taking office, people questioned his degree, and all his qualifications. Where has talk about that gone? I mean, are people not paying attention to it anymore? I mean, what happened to all that talk about his lack of education and skills and experience?
It's kind of like when there's a new restaurant and everybody wants to go to that new restaurant. So
Right.
he's the new chief.
Okay.
Everybody wants to talk about the new chief. Let's see what if he has skeletons in his closet,
Okay.
let's see. He came out and he admitted it and he said he was, trying to get that last credit or exactly, I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was working to finish the degree. So I think maybe the majority of people just took his word. I mean, he's the police chief. You want to believe him. Every time I've talked to him, I think he's very genuine.
Right.
So I guess maybe whoever was on that, I don't want to say witch hunt, but whoever was running down that avenue, either was satisfied with his answer or kind of just.
Well, it's also possible that is one of the roots of the distrust of the numbers that have come out too, that people have never gotten fully comfortable with him. But
You have to admit, though, he has had the ability, I think, to react to these, media kind of like almost like accusations very, very well. So I think people are also, I think, maybe a little bit excited about having a tough kind of candidate, I think, for that position. So.
But it's kind of funny though. Whenever they come out with these statistics, then we work in the media and we've seen all these sort of bizarre stories about murders in uptown and kids going crazy and destruction of property, and then we just keep getting these stats. I mean, how much do we have to blame with creating a narrative where there is distrust of the police when crime is actually falling? I mean, are we sensationalizing things too much in the media? When I say
If
we,
you're
I
asking
mean you.
yeah, no, I know I'm not. I'm telling there's two sides to every story, and
Okay.
I'm always telling that, and going a little further to try and is this true? Sometimes you interview somebody and it doesn't add up, so you go back to the police department or you go back to the police report and you try and find out.
Okay.
David,
what about you?
I don't take the blame.
Okay, all right. You off the hook,
it
Kate.
is true that we report on major incidents. We report on murders and nighttime issues downtown and bad accidents and that sort of thing. And they get the headlines and they get the most attention. I mean, I know I watch the traffic on my website carefully, and those stories get the most hits. The stories that don't get the most hits are the ones where we report what the actual numbers, like how many murders were there in Uptown, how many accidents were there that fit that description. So I think people don't tend to pay attention to the 60,000 foot view as much as they do about each bad incident. So.
Right.
Well, also as a reporter, I know that sometimes you need interviews. I am on TV reporting, so I can't quote somebody in an article. I need a face. And so sometimes those crimes that you talk about that grab the attention is because you have either victims' family members are more willing to talk or neighbors are more willing to talk, and that makes the story for me personally.
Right.
So sometimes it's easier when you have more people willing to speak out about it.
I have a question for you. I know we sometimes inject the DNC into every conversation. It's like, anything DNC. But with the crime stats falling, so severely, are we trying to create, kind of an air of extra safety for people ahead of the DNC, do you think? Or
We could be.
I'm
I
not
don't-
trying to be super cynical, but I'm
not a non-believer. Also, I think that the numbers, are probably correct or very close to being, correct. I don't think that they're fudging the numbers, like you said. But I do think that this information has to be getting out now. So as it's getting out, I think people are going to start to question it. Moving forward toward the DNC, I think that it's important for everyone that's going to be coming in to get a really good perspective, on everything that's going on in Charlotte. Whether it's crime, whether it's entertainment, whether it's living. There's going to be people here that are going to be here for a long period of time that need to know that information to make their assessment of what's
Right.
going on.
Okay. Well, I have one last question, and it's sort of like a lightning round question. I guess
Where's
we're
the
not
buzzer?
No, I don't know if we're going to get a chance to cover that. Well, I want to know, since we are all media people, social media, broadcast, and website. What's a piece of news that we kind of need to watch out for coming up in the week? Maybe a story you're working on, something you think we need to pay attention
Well, if
to.
I told you that, then everyone else would be on the same story.
Well, I mean, something. Let's say
I
it's
can't
coming
tell
out
you
like
that.
today or something, or even just a piece of news that you think people didn't pay attention to that you may have covered before.
Well, personally, since I'm from Florida, I want to say the Florida State win over Duke.
Yay!
Got to pay attention to Seminoles now.
Okay, all right.
That's not
I'll
a
take
story
that.
I'm covering.
No,
though,
no,
but-
no. That works. What about you, Constantine?
I think that it's important for people to understand more. I think where the where this new media technology kind of startup generation is happening here in Charlotte specifically. There are so many wonderful things that are happening here. From that I think that we're going to start focusing on it more and more.
Okay.
There's a lot of small little startup companies that need that kind of attention.
David?
This is a little bit of a boring one, but since we
Nothing
cover
is
town,
boring,
we
David.
cover town government on our websites, and I think that in the next couple of months, the budgets for next year are going to be really important to look at, and it's going to affect people in their pocketbooks where they are, whether we have tax increases.
You can get a lot of page views for that one, right? Put murder and budget together, you know? And I think that's
a good
sort of the
little
way
soup.
to do it, yeah. All right, well, that's it, folks. Thank you for joining us once again for our 4th episode. If you have any comments or any ideas about how to make the show better, improve the show, send it to 282TV at Twitter. Thanks a lot. I'm Carlton Hargrove, and this is 282.